Welcome back to All Sorts Podcast. I'm so excited for our deep dive
I
today
know.
into something that we all experience, but maybe haven't given a whole lot of thought to sneezing.
That's true.
We've got medical websites, we've got some tips and tricks articles, and even a very poetic article that really dives into the philosophy of sneezing.
Really interesting stuff.
So our goal for you today, listener, is to not only understand why we sneeze,
Yes.
but also how to potentially maybe tame those sneezes.
Right. Well,
So
some relief.
let's get started with the basics.
Yeah.
What's actually going on when we sneeze?
So it all starts with that feeling you get when you've got something irritating your nose, like dust pollen or pet dander.
Right.
And then that triggers your trigeminal nerve, which is responsible for the sensation in your face
Okay.
to send a message up to your brain.
So it's like a little alarm system.
Yeah, exactly.
And your nose.
A little alarm bell's going off.
Okay.
And your brain says, oh, we got to evict this irritant. And that's that powerful burst of air that we know as a sneeze.
Right. And, you mentioned those common culprits like dust and pollen,
Yeah.
pet dander, but some of our sources pointed to some really surprising sneeze triggers.
Oh, for sure.
Yo.
Yeah, like bright light can make some people sneeze
Really?
uncontrollably. That's called photic sneezing.
Photic sneezing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it affects a pretty big chunk of the population. It's
Wow.
like their brain misinterprets that sudden light as an irritant up in the nose.
Interesting. So you step out into the sunshine?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden,
Exactly.
you're sneezing.
Yep.
Our sources also mention spicy food
Yes.
and strong emotions as potential triggers, too.
Yeah, that's right. Spicy foods can trigger something called gustatory rhinitis.
Gustatory rhinitis.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's essentially the nerves in your nose overreacting to certain foods.
Okay.
And then strong emotions, whether it's stress or excitement, can also sometimes cause a sneeze.
So it seems like our bodies have like a whole arsenal of things that can make us sneeze.
They do.
Why are we so sensitive to all these things?
Well, it's important to remember that sneezing is, at its core, a defense mechanism.
Okay.
Your body is trying to expel those foreign invaders and irritants,
Okay.
keep everything clear and functional.
So even though it's annoying, it's actually our body trying to protect us?
It is. It's a good thing.
A good.
Yeah, like a little security system,
Working 24/7.
Yeah, keeping your respiratory system in tip-top shape.
I'm starting to appreciate the sneeze a little bit more
Good.
now.
Yeah.
But sometimes,
Yeah.
let's be honest, they can be inconvenient,
Oh, yeah.
embarrassing,
Absolutely.
overwhelming.
For sure.
Is there anything we can actually do to stop a sneeze?
That's the age-old question, isn't it?
Right.
The sneeze reflex is so fast, but there are a few things people swear by.
Okay.
You can try pinching your nose,
Mm-hmm.
blowing your nose maybe, before the sneeze takes over.
I've also heard that like saying a random word like pickle or something
Oh, yeah.
can help distract you.
The evidence for these is pretty limited, but, there's a chance they might work. For some people, it's about, understanding what your triggers are
Right.
and finding what works for you.
Finding your own technique.
Yeah,
So it's a little bit of trial and error.
it is.
But the act of trying maybe itself can offer some distraction.
Yeah, maybe that distraction is enough
Right.
to
Yeah.
kind of disrupt that reflex.
But sometimes those sneezes just have a mind of their own.
Oh, they do.
Speaking of sneezes having a mind of their own,
Yes.
when does it go beyond a simple achoo?
Right.
When should we start to worry?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you're having those excessive, persistent sneezes,
Okay.
that just won't quit. It might be worth talking to a doctor. There's something called intractable sneezing.
Intractable sneezing.
Yeah, and it could be a sign of something else
Okay.
that needs medical attention.
So it's not just how often you're sneezing, but how long it's been going on.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're concerned, it's always best to err on the side of caution.
Right.
Get checked out by a professional.
Right.
They can help you figure out what's causing it,
Okay.
whether it's allergies, an infection, or something else entirely.
And speaking of causes and treatments,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the options available for people who just battle the sneeze constantly?
Right. So it really depends on what's causing those sneezes.
Okay.
For allergies, there's a lot of different approaches.
Okay.
Over-the-counter antihistamines to prescription nasal sprays, even.
I've heard about allergy shots too.
Mm-hmm.
Do those actually work?
They can be really effective for some people.
Mhm.
Allergy shots work by exposing your body to tiny amounts of the allergen over time.
Okay.
So you gradually build up a tolerance.
So it's kind of like giving your body a sneak peek at the enemy.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. It's
Okay.
like training your immune system to not freak out. Right. And for infections like the common cold, It's really about relieving symptoms and supporting your body's natural defenses.
So things like rest fluids,
Yes.
maybe some over-the-counter cold medicine.
Exactly. Your body is a pretty amazing machine.
Right.
Sometimes the best thing you can do is give it what it needs to heal itself.
Makes sense. Now, earlier we talked about sneezing as a defense mechanism,
Yeah.
which I get.
Right.
But one of our sources mentioned that there are times when you actually might want to encourage a sneeze.
That might seem counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But sneezing is nature's way of clearing out your nasal passages. So if you're feeling congested from a cold or allergies,
Right.
a good sneeze can actually provide some relief.
It's like a natural decongestant.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Of course, you still want to cover your nose and mouth.
Right.
But don't be afraid to let one out every now and then.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, one of our sources went down a bit of a rabbit hole
Oh, yeah.
exploring sneeze superstitions. Apparently, there are all kinds of beliefs and rituals surrounding sneezing.
Well, we all know about saying bless you, right?
Right.
It's so common.
Yeah, but I never really thought about where it came from.
Right. The origins are a little bit mysterious. Some say it started because people thought that sneezing could expel your soul.
Wait, really?
Yeah, like your soul could fly right out of your nose.
Interesting.
Others believe it was tied to concerns about the Black Death because sneezing was a symptom,
Okay.
and they would say bless you to kind of ward off the illness.
It's amazing how something as simple as a sneeze can be connected to all this history.
It really adds another dimension to this everyday phenomenon.
Speaking of dimensions, let's talk about the force of a sneeze.
Okay.
How powerful are these things?
One of our sources said that a single sneeze can expel up to 40,000 droplets.
Wow, 40,000.
Yeah, and those droplets can travel up to 100 miles per hour.
100 miles an hour, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's like a little hurricane coming out of your nose.
No wonder sneezing is such a good way to spread germs.
Right, and it all happens so fast, too.
Wow.
Less than a second.
It's incredible how efficient the body is.
Yeah,
Even when it's kind of working against us.
that's true.
Now, we talked about some common sneeze triggers earlier.
Yeah.
But are there any that are like truly bizarre or unusual?
Oh, yeah. There are some weird ones out there.
Okay, tell me.
For example, some people sneeze when they pluck their eyebrows.
Really?
Yeah, it's thought to be because of that trigeminal nerve again.
Okay.
You know, the one that sends the signal to your brain?
Right.
And then there's sex sneezing.
Sex sneezing.
Yeah, some people sneeze during or after sexual activity.
Wow, that's interesting. And maybe a little awkward?
It depends on the timing, I guess.
Right.
We don't know exactly why it happens, but
Yeah.
it's probably connected to the nervous system.
So even our most intimate moments aren't immune to the power of the sneeze.
It seems not. The more we learn about sneezing, the more we realize how interconnected our bodies are. How these seemingly unrelated things can trigger these weird responses.
It really is remarkable. Now, have you ever had any, like, really memorable or unusual sneezing episodes?
Not really unusual, but I did have a sneezing fit once that seemed to last forever.
Okay.
It happened during a conference presentation.
Oh, no.
I know, every time I tried to speak a cheer.
Oh, my gosh.
It was mortifying, but also kind of funny looking back on it.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's funny how something so simple can create these unforgettable moments.
It is. It just adds to the intrigue of this whole sneezing thing.
And speaking of intrigue, did you know that scientists have actually studied the physics of sneezing?
Really?
Yeah. Apparently, the shape and velocity of those sneeze droplets can vary, depending on things like the size of your nasal passages
Interesting.
and the force of your exhalation.
So we all have like personalized sneeze patterns.
Yeah, and this research is helping scientists figure out better ways to prevent the spread of illnesses.
That's great. Even something as mundane as sneezing can have a big impact on public health.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about some practical tips for managing those sneezes,
Okay.
because I know that's why a lot of our listeners tuned in today.
Right. Let's give them some advice.
So first and foremost, if you're battling the sneeze constantly, it's important to figure out what your triggers are
Okay.
and then try to avoid them as much as possible.
Yeah, we talked about those usual suspects like dust and pollen, pet dander, but it's not always those things.
Right,
Remember those less common triggers, bright light,
right.
strong smells? Even certain foods can send some people into a sneezing frenzy.
It might be helpful to keep a sneeze diary.
A sneeze diary.
Yeah, just write down every time you sneeze
Okay.
and what you were doing or what you were exposed to right before.
That's a great idea. Once you know your triggers, you can start minimizing your exposure.
Right,
Invest in some air purifiers.
Huh?
Dust might proof your bedding.
right.
Avoid those sneeze-inducing foods.
Now, what about those times when a sneeze is brewing and you really want to stop it.
Yeah.
Are there any techniques that actually work?
Well, we've talked about some of those anecdotal remedies, pinching your nose,
Right.
blowing your nose.
Pressing your tongue to the roof of your mouth.
Right, but honestly, the evidence isn't really there
Hmm.
to support those methods.
So it sounds like it's more about distraction.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
If you feel a sneeze coming on
Hmm.
and you really want to try to stop it,
Right.
just pick your favorite distraction technique and go for it.
But it's important not to hold your breath or try to suppress it forcefully. Right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One of our sources mentioned that can actually lead to complications,
Oh, really?
like ruptured eardrums.
Okay.
So you don't want to do that
It's better to just let it out.
in a controlled way.
Speaking of control, one of our sources mentioned sneeze etiquette.
Sneeze etiquette.
Yeah, what is that all about?
I'm intrigued.
Well, it's basically just about minimizing the spread of germs when you sneeze.
Oh, okay.
It's a way to show consideration for others and protect yourself.
Right. The golden rule is to cover your nose and mouth when you sneeze,
Yes.
ideally with a tissue.
Ah,
But if you don't have one handy, just sneeze into the crook of your elbow.
and wash your hands thoroughly after sneezing.
Yes. Always wash your hands.
Or coughing,
Uh-huh.
just to reduce the spread of germs.
Absolutely.
And of course, if you're feeling under the weather,
Yeah.
it's always a good idea to stay home.
Stay home if you can.
Yeah. Now let's dive into treatments a little bit deeper.
Okay.
We've mentioned a few, but could you give us a more comprehensive overview of what's available?
Sure. As we said, the treatment for sneezing really depends on what's causing it.
Mm.
If it's allergies, there are over-the-counter and prescription medications that can help.
Like antihistamines.
Exactly. Antihistamines like loratadine and cetirizine,
Okay.
they block the action of histamine,
Mhm.
which is a chemical that's released during an allergic reaction.
Right.
And that triggers those symptoms like sneezing,
Right.
runny nose, itchy eyes.
Okay, what about nasal corticosteroids?
Nasal corticosteroids are another option.
Okay.
They reduce inflammation in the nasal passages,
Okay.
which helps to reduce those allergy symptoms,
Okay.
including sneezing.
And for more severe allergies, there are allergy shots.
That's right. Those are also known as immunotherapy.
Okay.
And you get regular injections of small amounts of the allergen
Okay.
to kind of desensitize your body over time.
So it's like retraining your immune system
Exactly.
to chill out a bit.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, what about sneezing caused by infections like the common cold
Right.
or the flu?
Mhm.
Are there any specific treatments for those?
Unfortunately, there's no cure for the common cold,
Okay.
but there are things you can do to relieve those symptoms.
Like what?
Over-the-counter pain relievers like acetaminophen or ibuprofen
Uh-huh.
can help with the fever and aches.
Okay.
Decongestants can help with that stuffy nose.
Right.
And of course, rest and fluids.
Rest and fluids.
Those are always a good idea.
Right.
Give your body what it needs.
And sometimes a good sneeze can actually help clear things out.
Exactly. Just remember to cover your mouth and nose.
Good point. Now, before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier,
Okay.
that sneezing can actually be beneficial
Yeah.
in certain situations.
Oh, right. It's easy to think of sneezing as annoying,
Right.
but it's a natural reflex that serves a purpose.
Okay.
When your nasal passages are irritated or congested,
Right.
sneezing helps clear them out.
So it's like a built-in cleaning mechanism.
Exactly. So if you're feeling stuffy and a sneeze is coming on, don't be afraid to let it out.
Just do it safely and politely.
Right. Exactly. Sneeze etiquette is always important.
Always important. Welcome back to the All Sorts podcast, where we're really diving deep into the world of sneezing.
That's right.
We've talked about the mechanics, the causes, the treatments.
Hmm.
But now I want to go a little bit deeper
Okay.
into the mind.
Interesting.
Can our thoughts and emotions actually trigger a sneeze?
There is some evidence that our mental state can actually play a role
Hmm.
in sneezing.
Really?
Yeah, some people experience what's called psychogenic sneezing.
Psychogenic sneezing?
Yeah. And that's when they sneeze repeatedly for no apparent physical reason.
So it's like their brain is telling them to sneeze even though there's no irritant.
Yeah, exactly. It's like their body's channeling those emotions through the sneeze reflex.
Wow. So our sneezes could be trying to tell us something about how we're feeling.
It's possible. It really highlights that connection between our physical and mental well-being.
It's a very complex system.
It is.
Now, one of our sources mentioned a condition called snatiation.
Snatiation.
Have you ever heard of that?
I have.
What is that?
So snatiation is basically when people sneeze after eating a big meal.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
We don't fully understand it,
Mm.
but some researchers think it might be related to stimulating the vagus nerve,
Oh, okay.
which is involved in digestion.
So it's like your body saying, okay, I'm full time for a sneeze.
Right, exactly. It's just another example of how quirky the human body can be.
Our bodies like to keep us on our toes.
They do.
Speaking of keeping us on our toes, we've talked a lot about sneezing as an individual experience.
Yeah.
But what about the social side of things?
Right.
Can sneezing affect our relationships with others?
It definitely can. Sneezing in public can be a little bit awkward.
Right.
You know, when we sneeze, we're expelling all those droplets into the air.
It's true. Not the most charming image,
Right. And that can make people feel disgusted or even scared.
especially if they're worried about getting sick.
Exactly.
So practicing good sneeze etiquette is not just about being polite. It's about protecting our social standing, too.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay. Note to self-master the art of the subtle sneeze.
Yes.
Now let's talk about some of the more unusual sneezing scenarios we found in our research.
Okay.
One that really stood out to me was photic sneezing.
Ah, yes, the sun sneeze.
Sun sneeze.
That's when people sneeze uncontrollably when they're exposed to bright light.
It's thought to be a genetic trait
Okay.
that affects a lot of people.
Interesting. So if you step outside on a sunny day and you start sneezing,
Yeah.
you might be a photic sneezer.
You might be. It's harmless,
Okay.
but it can be annoying.
I can imagine
Yeah.
sunglasses not just for fashion anymore.
Right.
We also came across something called gustatory rhinitis.
Gustatory rhinitis.
What is that?
That's when sneezing is triggered by eating certain foods.
Oh, okay.
Spicy foods are a common culprit, but it can also be things like onions,
Okay.
garlic, or even chocolate.
So it's like your nose is having an allergic reaction to the food.
Kind of. It's not a true allergy, but the symptoms can be similar.
It really is fascinating how our bodies react to all these different things.
It is.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to touch on one last thing.
Okay.
Apparently, sneezing can be pleasurable for some people.
That's right. Some people actually report feeling a sense of relief or even euphoria after a really good sneeze.
A sneeze-induced high. Yeah, maybe it's thought to be related to the release of endorphins.
Oh, okay, like those natural painkillers.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Well, I think we've covered all the bases here,
I think we have.
from the mechanics to the mysteries.
It's been quite a journey
It has.
through the world of sneezing.
And we hope you, dear listener, have come away with a new appreciation for this universal experience.
Yes, and remember, if you're having any problems with sneezing, don't hesitate to talk to your doctor.
They can help you figure out what's going on and recommend the best treatment.
Absolutely.
And that's it for our deep dive into sneezing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And be sure to like and subscribe to the All Sorts podcast on YouTube for more fascinating deep dives like this one.
Yes, and don't forget to follow us on X, Instagram, and Threads for even more curiosity-sparking content.
Let the All Sorts podcast be your guide as you explore the vast universe of knowledge, one intriguing topic at a time.
It's a journey filled with surprises, just like a sneeze.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those sneezes coming.
But please cover your nose and mouth.
Please cover your nose and mouth.